How long until I don't want to drink again? Got this question last night and I wanted to elaborate because I wanted to do that for this person, but also this is a very big deal when someone's like, hey, like I'm quitting. I've quit for a few days. How long until I don't crave this again? And I think this is relevant for really any substance that you want to stop using and you're looking to get into long-term sobriety, right? Well, the real thing is physically, it's like a few weeks to a few months. That kind of depends on the thing. This person's talking about drinking. Drinking normally, you can get back to normality pretty fast in terms of physical, like actual hormonal, biological cravings for a substance, okay? So if you're using very heavily, now you may need to go to like a detox. They'll give you something like Ativan for drinking, just to make sure you don't have any cardiac issues. That's usually if you're drinking really heavily. So like opiates for me, I mean, that's like a 2 to 3 month process to get normalized again, where you sleep normally, you eat normally, those things are regulated, okay? So physically, a couple weeks to a couple months, sometimes really fast, especially if you're talking about drinking. But the real issue is psychologically. You are going to psychologically crave a drink until you deal with the underlying issues that led you to drink in the first place. So this person told me they drank every day since COVID. It's 2024, COVID started in 2020. Now, I didn't clarify, but I'm just assuming that it was sometime in the early onset of COVID, so 2020, sometime like that. And that's a long time. So when you look at drinking or any substance, it's a mood altering substance. You're doing it to alter your current state. So if you've done something for that long every single day, there's a reason you're trying to alter your state. There's something deep underneath that. It's psychological, it's most likely subconscious. We've all gone through different things in our lives, different life experiences. This person, been through some stuff, and those things create and shape who we are. And then we look for ways to alter our current state so that we don't have to deal with some of those things. That's just what we do, right? And some people use drugs, but some people we all try to cope. We all try to find ways to not have to deal with what we are currently sitting in, our current emotions, our thoughts. And so when we choose not to deal with how we are currently, we're trying to avoid the actual deep internal stuff that's driving that forward. So if you drink every day for 4 years, that's telling me that you're trying to avoid something. There's something that you don't want to deal with. There's a reason why you want to change your state. So you will crave a drink for as long as you don't deal with that, because you're going to keep trying to find a way to change that state. Now, this person specifically had an event last week that kind of cascaded him to be like, hey, I got to stop doing this. That's great, but that's willpower. Willpower will only get you so far, because environmental subconscious cues are going to override that in the long term. So when you look at like Robert Dilt's logical levels of change, you can only willpower yourself over an environment. And an environment, as I'm coming to understand it over time, it's physical people, places, and things, but it's also your internal state. It's your subconscious. It's the way you've been adapting to life. It's the way experiences have transformed your beliefs and how you see the world. And so until you actually do the work to investigate that stuff and change that internal state and those belief systems, like, you're not going to overcome that in any short period of time just through willpower, okay? So you have to be willing to subject yourself to changing those things. Now, that's a long-term process. I still, I go to therapy, like, I'm still working through some stuff, but like, there are some base level things that you gotta start with, right? So to this person, I said, hey, like, what are the things that happen? And you're like, man, like, I don't want to deal with this. Or like, this is causing me problems. Or like, this is a thing where, like, when it comes up, like, I don't like this at all. You start understanding and seeing those patterns, and you start to see, oh, like, this is a thing I don't want to deal with. Like, I feel this way. A way that my therapist said, like, hey, when these things happen, how old do you feel, right? Like, it can take you back to a place in time where something happened and it transformed what you believed about reality and how you saw stuff. A lot of that stuff can be childhood, it can be early adulthood, it can be like a traumatic event or whatever, and it changed the way you perceived reality, which also means it changes how you adapt in your reality. And so those are the things that when you start digging deeply, like you can start to really change the craving, because the craving is simply a reflection of you trying to change your state. Now, some of those things are more complex. Some of those things, they're going to take a little bit more deep work. But on the surface, whenever you get to that point where you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, you have to admit two things. Number one, you have to admit that you don't know everything and you might not know exactly how to do this thing. That's like the first piece. Because if you walk around thinking like, I can figure this out, you have to be willing to say, well, my previous track record isn't really showing me that I have good success. So like for me, I went to rehab for an entire year. Day I got out, I relapsed. Obviously I wasn't all that in a bag of potato chips. That's the ego talking, where it's like, oh, I can figure this out this time. That's the willpower method to sobriety of like, oh, I'm just gonna willpower. I'm gonna win against this thing. I'm gonna fight. Like, the problem is you think you're fighting a thing, but like you're actually fighting an internal thing. So you're working against yourself, and that's exhausting. And like you can only uphold that mental struggle for so long, it will win, okay? So that's the first thing you have to admit is like, hey, I might not be able to figure this out on my own. I need some help. I need some help looking deeper. I obviously have some blind spots. I have some things I can't see, I can't understand, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is that you have to decide that the future is better than the past. Like when you are in a moment where you're like, hey, I feel like I need to drink, or I feel like I need to do this, is like, when you want to do that, if you do it, what you're also saying by your actions is, I'd rather go back to the past. I'd rather go back to that stuff, because I don't think a better future where my present is better is even possible. And that's a belief system, is I'd rather deal with the same old than actually make progress. So you have to be able to say, you know what? The future I'm building is better than the past. Like some people frame that as like, no, like there's nothing good about relapse or good about using, and that's cool. Like you can view some of those events and say, yeah, it's not worth going back to. But when you're in a moment and you're like, I don't want to deal with this, I don't want to feel this way, I have something going on that's like making me want to go back, you know, making me just want to not deal with the current moment, that's when relapse occurs. It's when you feel like, hey, I need a drink, I need this thing right now. And in that moment, you have to adopt a different mindset of, hey, like, I'm building a better future. And when you believe the future is better than the past, the future draws you forward rather than the past pulling you back. And that's why I don't believe in once an addict, always an addict, because that mantra says, I'm always my past. Nah, man, you can be a former. You can leave that in the past. You don't have to be the same. It doesn't have to be like that anymore. And it sounds so small, but in those moments, hey, I need help. There's some about this I don't understand, and I'm building a better future. Forward progress, moving forward, and not staring in the rearview mirror, as cliche as it sounds, like not looking back there, but looking that way, right? That is the long-term approach, is just knowing that you don't have to have it all together today. You don't have to be perfect, but today is a stepping stone into that future. 13 years sober, I can tell you, nothing I want to go back to. And so even on my worst days today, relapsing just isn't even a thought on my mind anymore. There was a day that wasn't true where I would think about it or crave it, but in those moments I said, now there's a day, and today's the day, right? So here I am sharing this story. So I just want to encourage you, like, physically, it's not going to take that long. But psychologically, there's some things we got to work through, but you can be in process. I'm still in process, right? We can be in process and do this stuff. And long term, you're going to get to a place, but just remember, today's the day. You're already sober today. Like, you can choose to live that way today. There's not just like one moment in the future when it happens. Like, each day you do it is a building block. So enjoy the present moment, enjoy the struggle, realize that you are choosing a form of character development that will serve you for many years to come. So appreciate you if you're listening, care about you if you're struggling. You can always book a call with me. Links in the all over the place, wherever you see my stuff. So thanks guys, I'll see you later.